Hello, everyone. I hope that you all are having a wonderful Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. I am just checking to make sure everything is working. Let's see if it's working in Facebook. Okay. See if it's working on Facebook. And I can hear myself. Now I'm just checking to see if it is on YouTube as well. Gotta just check technology. Am I right? And then I'm going to pull up my information too for today. Because my computer decided to do a nice little shutdown. And YouTube, look. All right. Great. I think that it is. Yeah. Yay. I'm live in YouTube too. Perfect. It looks like everything is working, and now I'm just needing to get my information up. I am extremely excited about today's topic. Yeah, I can't wait to get in and get started. So I would love to know, for anyone who is watching, drop a comment below. Let me know if you know anything regarding mitochondria, what they are, if you know of any role in the body, or if you've even heard of mitochondrial dysfunction. I seriously would love to know, because this topic is not talked about like it should be. And I guess I'm starting to become more and more vocal with my frustration with modern day medicine, or Western medicine. I am not pleased with things that I'm seeing, hearing, have experienced myself, and not getting to the root cause of problems. So you might hear my frustration come out more and more. I apologize. Obviously, Western medicine has its place and can be very, very beneficial, but unfortunately, it is steering a lot of people into not great health. And on that note, I'm going to take a sip of my tea. So I'm just clicking over the YouTube. Okay. So to get started today, I just want to emphasize that fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue are just two of many conditions with an underlying energy crisis. So, I mean, think about the two big symptoms. Chronic fatigue. Obviously, there's chronic fatigue syndrome, but there's like chronic fatigue, so being fatigued all the time. And just that debilitating exhaustion that people have. And unfortunately, that's not just with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue. That's a huge component of them. But that's also part of a lot of other illnesses. Fatigue is not uncommon to hear about. And personally, I believe that a lot more people are dealing with mitochondrial problems than is even like touched upon. And Western medicine does not address this. So, I mean, next time you go to a doctor and you're like, hey, Have you heard about this? What's up with this? Especially if you have fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue or some of the other things that I'm going to list. See what your doctor says. A lot of times they'll blow things up unless you have a genetic issue that is mitochondrial a mitochondrial disease. But other than that, Western medicine doesn't really recognize the dysfunction that is occurring for people. So there are hundreds of things that can trigger the energy crisis in chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia, just like there are hundreds of ways to blow a fuse. So that's from Jacob Teitelbaum, who is a medical doctor. So a quote from him. And when the mitochondria become compromised, unfortunately, the entire system is compromised because the body cannot make enough energy or ATP. So those are two big hitters that I want you to, start off with and just get your gears turning. So first off, what are mitochondria? So these are organelles that are located within each cell. So this does not include your red blood cells, but includes every other cell. And they are in large numbers. So about 15 to 50% of the total cell volume of your cell. So these organelles take up a lot of the room. So they contain an outer and inner membrane that are composed of phospholipids. And they are responsible for generating ATP, which is energy for the cell, through something called oxidative phosphorylation. Mitochondria are also responsible for fatty acid oxidation, amino acid oxidation, calcium homeostasis, and apoptosis, which is programmed cell death for the body. They're involved with iron metabolism and heme synthesis, steroid synthesis, thermogenesis, and immune system function, as well as other things. So they do more than just provide energy for the cells. They are involved in a lot of different reactions. So mitochondria even have their own DNA. So that's known as mtDNA. So this DNA is inherited actually through the mom. So, like our regular DNA, we get some from our dad, we get some from our mom, but this is just coming from the mother. So that's a really cool thing. And as a mom, I think that's really cool that I just provided that to my little guys, or little ones, little girl and little boy. And this DNA is more susceptible to damage, including mutations, than our regular nuclear DNA. So the mitochondria also has where the Krebs cycle takes place. So the Krebs cycle, if any of you are, science majors or into science or biology, physiology, any anatomy, all of that stuff, you should have heard of the Krebs cycle. And we learned this in, I want to say we learned this in high school too. We just might forget it, but definitely in college, especially if you're in the sciences. But the Krebs cycle is a series of chemical reactions that help release stored energy, and that's in the form of the ATP, like I talked about, from nutrients. So from our carbohydrates, from our proteins, and from our fats. So the Krebs cycle, breaks down these nutrients and gets energy from them so that it can be used for cells and the processes in the body. Mitochondria are located at the interface between the environmental calorie supply and the energy requirements of each organ. So they have this key interplay that is part of their role. Mitochondria are also the energy source of the cell, like I mentioned, therefore they have great potential to affect overall health in a major way. Obviously, our cells need energy in order to function and do all the things that we need to do. Breathing as well, running, looking around, being able to communicate with you. This all requires energy. Thinking requires energy. So it's it's part of our being. This is crucial, right? And if they're not functioning properly, things are going to go to haywire. We need We need the energy. We need to do our things. And all organs and systems require energy to function properly. So therefore, they're dependent on the function of our mitochondria. There are different types of mitochondrial dysfunction. So there's primary and then there's also secondary. So primary is like I talked about where, there's a genetic mutation, maybe that happens, an inborn error, something you are born with. And I'm not going to be talking about this one during today's discussion. I'm going to be talking about the secondary mitochondrial dysfunction. And this can come from environmental toxins, whether it's the accumulation of pollutants, whether it's coming from years of poor sleep, chronic stress, hyperglycemia, which is high blood sugar in the body and like chronic high blood sugar, oxidative stress. So when your cells are becoming damaged in the body from various things, illnesses, what have you. Copper toxicity and heavy metals can also damage our mitochondria. And there's so much more. And then there's medication toxins too, which I will get to because I'm very frustrated about that one. So mitochondrial dysfunction has been identified in conditions ranging from cancer, infertility, diabetes, heart disease, blindness, chronic kidney disease, depression, fatty liver disease, dwarfism, normal aging, so just normal aging, Parkinson and Alzheimer's disease, ALS, Huntington's disease. So a lot of those neurodegenerative diseases. Obviously, chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia, metabolic syndrome, which a lot of people in the US struggle and are suffering with metabolic syndrome. Autoimmune diseases, think of multiple sclerosis, systemic lupus, type 1 diabetes, etc. Neurobehavioral and psychiatric diseases like autism spectrum disorders, schizophrenia, bipolar and mood disorders, GI disorders like intestinal or inflammatory bowel disease, obesity, skin disorders, chronic infections, essentially all chronic diseases. Like, why is this not being talked about? I am so frustrated and also so excited to then bring this to you because you guys, we need to know about this. We need to start healing from the roots, and our mitochondria are part of our roots. Mitochondrial dysfunction arises from inadequate number of mitochondria maybe in the body, an inability to provide necessary substrates to the mitochondria, or it can be a dysfunction involved in the electron transport and ATP synthesis machinery. So maybe there's something wrong in that chain that helps build that ATP. So the electron transport process also can produce something called reactive oxygen species, or ROS. So this is one of, we can say it's a downside of our mitochondria and their reactions, is that they produce these ROS, which are highly reactive free radicals that are produced as a byproduct of oxidative phosphorylation, which is crucial in the Krebs cycle, crucial for mitochondria, all that, and producing the ATP. So it needs to happen. Mitochondria are the main sources of ROS, and another one called RNS too. And they can damage cellular lipids, proteins, and DNA. So unfortunately, when our mitochondria are starting to go haywire, we can also have a leak that occurs within the mitochondria as well. So it results in reduced ATP production, but it also still consumes oxygen. So you're still having this process going on, consumed, but you're not getting the output of energy that is needed. So it's just consuming more than it's replenishing with energy. And then you're having these reactive oxygen species that are going around in the body and causing damage. So when I say there's dysfunction going on with the mitochondria, there's a lot. And it results to further damage of the mitochondrial membrane. So it's a big problem. So dysfunction is directly related to excess fatigue, unfortunately, and it makes sense. So moderate to severe fatigue is related to loss of mitochondrial function and diminished production of ATP. Because if your mitochondrial function is not, if it's not functioning properly, you're not going to get that ATP output. So therefore, you're not going to have that energy. It's not going to supply it to the cells. You're going to be fatigued. And when mitochondria begin to function improperly, we can get symptoms usually involving, we can get symptoms that are involved in the organs that require the most ATP. So that includes our brain. So think of like the brain fog and just the drain feeling. Your brain is not functioning properly. It's not gonna, we can start to see more of those, neurodegenerative diseases popping up. Cranial and peripheral nerves, skeletal muscles. So like muscle fatigue, heart muscle. So it's not gonna be, you're not getting the energy to your heart. And that can lead to a lot of problems. Endocrine glands. So you can have haywire with your blood sugars. That's where like that type 2 diabetes and all that can come in. And type 1 diabetes, that's where we can start to see those problems and the dysfunction of the mitochondria happening in them. And then like kidneys too. So those are some of the high consuming energy organs. And if they don't have the functioning of the mitochondria to provide with energy, those systems are going to really start to see or take the hits more so. And symptoms will start popping up in these areas. So we can start to see an increase in muscle stiffness. We can start to see more pain, more fatigue, exercise intolerance, neurological symptoms, immune system dysregulation, which involves a whole slew of things then, and just general inflammation, and obviously more. But those are some of the big symptoms that will start to pop up. Do any of those symptoms sound familiar? Especially for chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia people. Yes, those symptoms should sound familiar. And you know what? They sound familiar for a lot of conditions, and sadly, the general public, because unfortunately, the general public also has comorbidities, or a lot of issues with health. So our mitochondria are being taxed for sure. And what negatively affects our mitochondria and what leads to this dysfunction? So I mentioned, environmental toxins. I mentioned medication toxins. And I'm going to get into the medication ones next. But nutrient insufficiencies and deficiencies can also lead to a dysfunction in mitochondria. Unfortunately, a lot of us are not walking around with optimal nutrition, and a lot of us are insufficient in many nutrients. And so we are not helping our mitochondria in any sense of the word. The environmental toxins that I mentioned earlier, and then medications. So this includes statins. A lot of people are on statins. This includes all classes of psychotropic drugs. Think of antipsychotics. Think of, that includes like Abilify, anti-anxiety like Xanax and Valium or Klonopin, Effexor and venlafaxine. So those are SNRIs. Stimulants like Adderall, SSRIs like Lexapro or Zoloft or citalopram. Another SNRI that a lot of people with fibromyalgia are put on, Cymbalta. So Cymbalta is also a mitochondrial depleter, and can lead to mitochondrial dysfunction. Like, these are medications known to lead to mitochondrial dysfunction. So you already have this problem, and now your doctor just prescribed you with more medication that is only hurting and getting rid of or causing more dysfunction with your mitochondria. So how does that make any sense? It is so frustrating to me. And I want you to have this information because it's huge. MAOIs, tricyclic antidepressants like amitriptyline, mood stabilizers like Lamictal, analgesics like acetaminophen, NSAIDs, metformin, beta blockers for high blood pressure medications. And the list is not over by that, but those are just some of the big ones. And those are a lot of common medications that people are being put on. So this is involving more than just fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue patients. This is involving a big population, and it's not being talked about. Infections, including gut infections, can reduce your mitochondria or lead to dysfunction. Gut dysbiosis, so an imbalance in our gut. Bacteria, a lot of people with that problem. Chronic inflammation, illness and chronic illness, the aging process itself. So oxidative damage, over the years can happen to the mitochondria membranes and impair their functioning abilities. And there are more factors than that, and more that we don't even know about yet. So the list goes on. It's with our current lifestyles and the way things are going, our mitochondria are not being supported like they need to be. And they're definitely not functioning optimally. So we need to address this. So how can we address this? So there are key nutrients for mitochondrial support. And I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of the nutrients today because it's already been 21 minutes. But I will be talking about that more so in like what foods to incorporate to help your mitochondria next Wednesday. So this is just to get your foot in the door when it comes to mitochondria and to really get you thinking about how impactful this is to our health. So the key nutrients, B vitamins, all the B vitamins, you guys, we need to make sure that we are having sufficient B vitamins. So they stimulate defective coenzymes. They play a key role in mitochondrial function and energy production. They, like thiamine, for example, plays a role in the citric acid cycle or the Krebs cycle, and they help. Thiamine actually helps to start that cycle. So it's a big key player, like from the get-go. Riboflavin or B2 plays a role in the respiratory chain. NAD plus or NADH, it's actually synthesized from niacin, which is vitamin B3. And NAD plus or NADH is a key component of oxidative phosphorylation. So we want to make sure that we have enough of it. And people who have supplemented with NAD or any of these, vitamins or nutrients that I talk about, there has been a lot of benefit and support with the mitochondria with supplementation. So pantothenic acid or B5, it's part of coenzyme A, which is in the beginning of the process for energy production and plays a role in beta oxidation, which we don't need to, I just like to give out the nerdy stuff there too. But B6 acts as an antioxidant and is a cofactor in many enzymatic reactions, plays a key role in amino acid metabolism. Biotin or B7 is required for fatty acid oxidation and gluconeogenesis as a coenzyme. Folate or B9, they are necessary for the maintenance of mitochondrial DNA and more. About a third to a fifth of folate are located in our mitochondria themselves. Cobalamin or B12 plays a role in mitochondrial DNA and amino acid synthesis, as well as fat and carbohydrate metabolism. So as you can see, those B vitamins, they all play a role when it comes to our mitochondria. So we need to make sure that we are getting enough B vitamins. We need to make sure that we don't have troubles with metabolizing the B vitamins. So, seeing if you have an MTHFR mutation, which is a methylation mutation. So you don't methylate your B vitamins quite as well, and you can't absorb B vitamins quite as well. So you want to get methylated forms of those B vitamins or B complex vitamins, especially the B6, the folate, and the B12. So those are the big hitters that we see methylation issues with. So I just wanted to point that out. Magnesium also plays a huge role with our mitochondria. A lot of us are walking around deficient. I've already mentioned that before in previous videos, but it's a cofactor in ATP metabolism. And acetyl L-carnitine is another supplement that people can take to help with mitochondrial support. It transports acetyl-CoA into the mitochondria for fatty acid oxidation to create energy. And there was a study that showed a treatment group that was utilizing L-carnitine, and they had significant improvements in physical fatigue, mental fatigue, and fatigue severity. Potentially creatine as well could be very supportive. It acts as a buffer from ATP and helps aid mitochondrial function. And acetylcysteine is a huge one, really good for immune system as well, and good for gut health and replenishing your gut health. Increases glutathione in the body, which is the master antioxidant for the body. So we want to make sure that we're creating enough of it, have enough of it in our body. And it's an antioxidant defense as well. So it's a huge antioxidant for the body. Our mitochondria need these antioxidants because, again, part of the mitochondria chain of reactions is that it creates these reactive oxygen species. So when we have the antioxidants from our foods, from supplements, healthy lifestyles, that can help reduce those ROS and the RNS that the mitochondria create. So it keeps things in balance. And that's what we want. CoQ10, huge, 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 huge when it comes to our mitochondria function and our energy. So I take CoQ10. I also take N-acetylcysteine. I take B vitamins too. But CoQ10 is a component of 3 of the 5 enzyme complexes of oxidative phosphorylation. So has a huge role in the energy production. It is essential bionutrient, and our bodies produce less and less of it as we get older, so we need more support. It's a fat-soluble antioxidant that provides protection against damage caused by harmful free radicals. Again, think about the ROS that I talked about above. So if you have enough CoQ10, it's helping with that energy production. And it's also counteracting the reactive oxygen species that our mitochondria are producing when they're working. So it helps keep that balance again. It's also, unfortunately, a lot of medications deplete CoQ10, just like they disrupt our functioning mitochondria. So statins aren't the only one that deplete CoQ10 in the body. Thiazide diuretics deplete it. Sorry, I clearly need more mitochondrial support. And these are blood pressure meds. Hydralazine vasodilators, also high blood pressure meds. Adrenergic agonists, think of clonidine or methyl-dopa. Beta blockers, think metoprolol as one. Oral contraceptives and hormone replacement therapy drugs also deplete our CoQ10. Sulfonylurea and biguanide medications. These are used in diabetes. Tricyclic antidepressants and major tranquilizers all deplete CoQ10 too. So we want to make sure that we are replenishing CoQ10 in the body, and that's where taking it can really help. There are some supplements out there that utilize PQQ, which is an antioxidant, and it's like a combination of PQQ and CoQ10. So both really supportive to our mitochondria. And I did notice a difference when I started taking that. I started to have more energy, and it just helps with the healing. So lipoic acid is another one that has helped people, aids conversion of food into energy. It's an antioxidant, also an anti-inflammatory agent. It also can chelate to metals, so it can aid in detoxification of heavy metals. Alpha lipoic acid, very similar to the lipoic acid above. So there's lipoic acid, which is like a different formation. It's an R lipoic acid, and then there's alpha lipoic acid. They just have different structures. Nicotinamide riboside is also known as NR. And this is an NAD plus precursor, so it's a supplement that you can take. It has shown that taking 1,000 milligrams 2 times a day, people had experienced an increase in NAD plus in their serum levels, which obviously we need that for mitochondrial support. sorry. Ethanolamine, there we go, or PE. It's an inner membrane component of our mitochondria, and it's very dependent on choline status. Choline you can find in like eggs, huge helper, helps with brain function and all that too. And then in general, antioxidants, very supportive for our mitochondria. So resveratrol, PQQ, vitamin E, vitamin C, potentially vitamin A as well. Carotenoids, especially lycopene, epigalico, oh my gosh, I can't say this one. EGCG, epigallocatechin gallate. There we go. My tongue wanted to keep saying extra letters in there. And you find this in green tea. Glutathione, like I mentioned before, you can get that from NAC, but you can also get liposomal glutathione as well. And melatonin is a very potent antioxidant. We just want to be careful with melatonin. As you know, sometimes it can take away from our own melatonin production and can kind of disrupt our rhythms, our biological rhythms. So we want to just be cautious of that one, but it is really helpful with the immune system and as an antioxidant. So it's not one that I recommend people be on for a long time. Polyphenols like quercetin, resveratrol that I mentioned, antioxidant, hydroxytyrosol, which is found in olives and olive oil. They scavenge the reactive oxygen species and they modulate mitochondrial biogenesis. So they help create more mitochondria. And they do more too. Then there's proanthocyanidins, which are antioxidant phytochemicals that are found in plant foods. Selenium, in the right balance, it protects against oxidative stress. We just don't want to have excessive selenium in our system because it can cause problems and lead to more oxidation rather than the other way around, which is what we want to prevent oxidative stress. Zinc, very similar to selenium. It's very beneficial alongside calcium in mitochondrial redox regulation. It's an important antioxidant, but if we have excessive zinc, it can actually lead to oxidative stress. So any membrane phospholipids, so use of oral membrane phospholipids plus antioxidants in doses ranging from 500 to 2,000 milligrams a day has been effective in the treatment of certain clinical conditions like chronic fatigue syndrome and fatiguing illnesses in general, so fibromyalgia included. It can also increase mitochondrial function and decrease fatigue. So when it comes to an overall strategy to support your mitochondria, the first step is to really recognize the areas in where you might be more susceptible to problems, whether it's environmental toxins. Have you been exposed to? I mean, we all are. So the answer is yes. Poor sleep, lack of exercise, poor diet, etc. Any of those things that I had mentioned previously in the video. Then we want to feed. So we want to, recognize those, take those stressors away, heal whatever those stressors have burden those stressors have put onto the body, and feed our mitochondria for maximum health. So reduce the stressors, get rid of any infections, emotional stress, nutrient insufficiencies, and then boost our mitochondria through key nutrients, through healing emotional trauma, addressing the endocrine system if there's any disruption with that, lowering any inflammation in the body, using mind-body techniques, so yoga, tai chi, meditation, breath work, visualization, there we go. Those types of things, supporting detoxification, reducing our overall stressors, and considering other things like intermittent fasting and mild calorie restriction with proper nutrient support, of course. They can help boost mitochondrial function while reducing reactive oxygen species. So like I mentioned, next week I'm going to go over, the various foods that contain these nutrients that I talked about and dietary strategies and protocols that can help support your mitochondria. This is really just to get your foot in the door, like I said before, and have you understand how crucial of a role our mitochondria play in our health. And it's not being talked about. So with that being said, I hope this introduction was beneficial for you. I hope you learned a lot. Do you, for those watching, do you have any questions at all? If you do, please drop it in the comment section below. I would love to hear your thoughts. And again, next week, I'm going to dive into the foods, the protocols, the different strategies that you can use to support your mitochondria. I gave a brief little glimpse with the, nutrient support, but I'm going to go even further next Wednesday on that because it's already 35 minutes and I don't want to, take up even more of your time. But I hope you guys found that helpful. I'm very excited to be bringing this topic to you. Again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out, drop it below. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. All right, you guys take care. And until next time, I'll see ya.